Part 1. The Betrayal. I always thought my dad saw me, not just as his daughter, but as someone who mattered, someone who earned her place in the world through hard work and determination. I wasn't the kind of kid who needed reminders to study or finish chores. I was the one who stayed up late perfecting essays, who worked weekends at a bakery while my friends went to parties, who saved every dollar from babysitting gigs for college textbooks I hadn't even bought yet. My dad, Richard, would pat me on the head after report card day and say, "You're the smart one, Chloe. You'll go far." And I believed him. Every word felt like a promise, a quiet assurance that he saw me for who I was and what I could become. But sometimes promises are just words dressed up as lies. The day my acceptance letter from Harvard arrived should have been one of those moments you remember forever, the kind you frame and hang on your wall, because it's proof that all your sacrifices meant something. When I opened that thick envelope with its crimson seal and read "Congratulations," I felt like I was standing at the edge of everything I'd ever dreamed of. I ran into the kitchen, clutching the letter like it was made of gold. My mom smiled softly when she saw it, pride glimmering in her eyes as she hugged me tight. But my dad? He barely looked up from his coffee mug. "Good job," he said casually, flipping through his newspaper like this was just another Tuesday morning. I thought maybe he was just processing it in his own way. He'd always been reserved when it came to emotions, but something about his tone made my stomach tighten. "So, when do we start talking about tuition?" I asked, trying to sound lighthearted even though my voice wavered slightly. He didn't even glance at me when he said it. "Oh, about that. I used the money." I froze mid-step, gripping the edge of the counter like it might keep me steady. "What money?" "Your college fund," he replied matter-of-factly, taking another sip of coffee. "I put it into Lucas's business." At first, I thought I'd misheard him, or maybe this was some kind of terrible joke, but then he kept talking as if nothing had happened. "Your brother needed a push. You'll understand one day." Understand? Understand what? That my future, the one I'd spent years building brick by brick, had been sold off like some spare piece of furniture to fund Lucas's half-baked idea of opening a bar downtown? Lucas, my older brother by 2 years, who barely graduated high school, dropped out of community college twice, and couldn't hold down a job longer than 6 months? That Lucas now had my Harvard tuition poured into neon lights and overpriced cocktails? The room felt like it was tilting beneath me. My mom started saying something. I don't even remember what, but all I could hear was my dad's voice echoing in my head. Family helps each other. Family helps each other? Where was this so-called help when I was staying up until 2 a.m. writing scholarship essays? When I was working double shifts at the bakery so I could afford SAT prep books? I didn't cry. Not then, not in front of him. Instead, I stood up from the table with shaking hands and nodded slowly like I understood, and walked away from everything I thought I knew about family. Within a week, I packed up my things and moved out of our house in suburban Massachusetts to crash on my best friend Maya's couch in Boston. She didn't ask questions. She just handed me a blanket and told me to make myself at home. I picked up 3 jobs, waitressing at a diner during breakfast shifts, bartending at night downtown, ironically enough, and tutoring high school students on weekends, and enrolled in night classes at a local community college. Harvard was no longer an option. There was no way I could afford it now. Every dollar I earned went straight into savings. Rent, tuition, groceries. I budgeted every penny like my life depended on it because honestly, it did. 3 months after leaving home, while waiting for the bus one rainy afternoon after work, I saw Lucas's face plastered across a billboard downtown. Patio 66, where good times begin. It read in bold letters above his smug face framed by neon lights and cocktail glasses. He looked like some kind of celebrity mixologist, even though he couldn't make scrambled eggs without calling mom for help. I stood there staring at that billboard until the bus pulled up behind me with its brakes screeching loudly enough to snap me out of my trance. My fingers tightened around the apron tied around my waist, the same apron I wore cleaning puke-stained booths at the diner where I made minimum wage while Lucas got to play entrepreneur with my future funding his dream. According to Maya, who still kept tabs on people from high school, Patio 66 had become the place to be. College kids flocked there for theme nights. Influencers filmed TikToks under its glowing neon sign. Local magazines wrote glowing reviews about its vibrant atmosphere. And Lucas? He soaked up every ounce of attention like a sponge. giving interviews and acting like he built it all himself from scratch. Meanwhile, Dad bragged about him to anyone who would listen at church. "My boy is making it big," he'd say with pride dripping from every word. And me? Not a single call, not one message asking how I was doing or if I needed anything since moving out. But honestly, it didn't matter anymore because something inside me had shifted. Late one night after closing up the diner, Maya found me sitting cross-legged on her couch with an open notebook in my lap and a pen tapping against my knee. "What are you doing?" she asked curiously. "Planning," I said simply. "For what?" "For something better." And that's when it began. The first seeds of an idea that would eventually grow into something bigger than myself. By day, I worked tables and cleaned floors. By night, I devoured books on small business management and marketing from the community college library. Every free lecture online became my classroom. Every napkin at work became my notebook for scribbled ideas. I wasn't just dreaming anymore. I was preparing. And slowly but surely, something began to bloom within me. This refined version adds depth to characters and emotional stakes while maintaining relatability for US-based audiences through culturally specific details and vivid imagery. It balances pacing with impactful moments and foreshadows Chloe's resilience and determination effectively. Part 2. The Journey of Independence. You know, independence doesn't come with applause or fanfare. It doesn't feel triumphant at first. It feels like stepping into a storm with no umbrella, no map, and no way to know if you'll ever find shelter. That's exactly how it felt for Chloe when she walked away from her family and the life she thought she knew. But storms have a way of revealing who you really are. When Chloe left her parents' house, she wasn't just leaving behind the comforts of home. She was leaving behind the version of herself who believed hard work always paid off, who thought family meant unconditional support. What she didn't realize then was that this storm she'd stepped into would become the fire that forged her into someone stronger than she'd ever imagined. For months, Chloe worked tirelessly. 3 jobs, endless shifts, and barely enough time to sleep. She lived on coffee and determination, scraping together every penny she could to pay for night classes at a local community college. Her dream of Harvard was gone, but Chloe wasn't the type to let broken dreams stop her. If she couldn't walk through the front door of success, she'd build her own entrance. It started as a seed, a small idea planted late one night as she sat on Maya's couch with an open notebook in her lap. She remembered the bakery where she worked as a teenager, how much she loved turning simple ingredients into something warm and comforting. Back then, baking felt like magic, a way to create joy out of nothing but flour, sugar, and time. Maybe, just maybe, that magic could be her future. Chloe didn't just dream, she planned. She spent every free moment researching small business management and marketing strategies. Every free online workshop became her classroom. Every library book on entrepreneurship became her guide. She scribbled ideas on napkins during breaks at work and tested recipes in Maya's tiny kitchen after midnight. And then came the leap, the moment when planning turned into action. Chloe took every dollar she'd saved over those grueling months and rented a small storefront on the edge of Boston's bustling downtown area. It wasn't much, just a narrow space with peeling paint and creaky floors, but it was hers. She spent weeks transforming it into something special, painting walls in warm shades of gold and cream, hanging string lights to create a cozy atmosphere, and setting up shelves filled with freshly baked bread and pastries. She named it Golden Crust. The name felt like a promise, a reminder that even in the hardest times, there's something golden waiting beneath the surface if you're willing to dig deep enough. At first, business was slow. Chloe spent long hours behind the counter waiting for customers who never came. But instead of giving up, she got creative. She started handing out free samples at local farmers markets and posting mouth-watering photos of her pastries on social media. Slowly but surely, people began to notice. Within 6 months, Golden Crust became a local favorite. The buttery aroma of freshly baked bread spilled onto the sidewalk every morning, drawing in passers-by like moths to a flame. Customers raved about Chloe's signature sourdough loaf, crispy on the outside, soft and tangy on the inside, and her cinnamon rolls that melted in your mouth. Word spread quickly. Families stopped by after school for treats. Office workers picked up loaves for their lunch breaks. Food bloggers wrote glowing reviews online. By the end of those 6 months, Golden Crust had earned $50,000 in revenue, a number Chloe had once thought impossible. But it wasn't just about the money. For Chloe, every smiling customer who walked through her doors felt like proof that she was capable, that she could build something beautiful out of nothing but grit and determination. Meanwhile, across town, Lucas's company Novatech was crumbling. At first glance, Lucas seemed like he had it all. Flashy marketing campaigns, sleek office spaces filled with expensive furniture, and investors eager to pour money into his vision without asking too many questions. But beneath the surface, it was all smoke and mirrors. Lucas had built Novatech on shaky ground from day one, promising clients more than he could deliver and cutting corners wherever he could to save costs. For a while, it worked. He landed big contracts with tech companies eager to jump on board his innovative solutions. But as deadlines passed and promises went unfulfilled, cracks began to show. The final blow came when one of Lucas's largest clients filed a lawsuit against him for copyright infringement, a mistake born out of desperation when Lucas tried to pass off someone else's software as his own. The lawsuit sent shockwaves through his investor network. Within weeks, funding dried up completely. By the time news reached Richard, Chloe's father, Novatech was drowning in debt faster than Lucas could bail water out of the sinking ship. Richard did what he always did when Lucas was in trouble. He stepped in to save him. He took out loans against his retirement fund and even tried selling off family heirlooms to cover Lucas's mounting legal fees. But no matter how much money Richard threw at the problem, it wasn't enough. Chloe heard about all this through Maya one evening while closing up Golden Crust. Maya had seen an article online about Novatech's downfall. It described Lucas as a cautionary tale for entrepreneurs who bite off more than they can chew. For a moment, Chloe felt a flicker of satisfaction deep in her chest. Not because she wanted Lucas to fail, but because justice had finally caught up with him. But that flicker quickly faded into something heavier: pity. Lucas had been handed everything: money, opportunities, and still managed to lose it all because he didn't know how to value what he'd been given. Chloe thought about her father then, the man who had sacrificed her future for Lucas's dreams, and wondered if he regretted his choices now that everything had fallen apart. But Chloe didn't dwell on those thoughts for long because she had learned something important during her journey. Revenge wasn't what drove her anymore. Success was. Every morning at Golden Crust, Chloe woke up before sunrise to knead dough by hand, while sunlight spilled through her shop windows like liquid gold. A reminder that even after storms pass, there's always light waiting on the other side. Her journey wasn't over yet, not by a long shot, but for the first time in years, Chloe felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. And as customers lined up outside her shop each day waiting for their favorite pastries, Chloe knew one thing for certain. She didn't need anyone else's approval or support anymore. Not her father's, not Lucas's, not anyone's. She had built this life herself, with nothing but grit, determination, and an unshakable belief that even broken dreams can lead you somewhere beautiful if you're brave enough to keep going. Part 3. The Bold Decision. Sometimes, revenge doesn't look like fire and fury. It doesn't come with shouting matches or dramatic confrontations. Sometimes, it's quiet, calculated, a chess move that takes your opponent by surprise. That's exactly what Chloe was planning. She didn't want to destroy Lucas. No, that would be too easy. She wanted to take what he had squandered and turn it into something meaningful, something that proved her strength and resilience. She wanted her success to be the loudest answer to the betrayal she had endured. But first, she had to play the game. It all started when Chloe overheard a conversation at a local coffee shop. A casual remark from two men in suits about Novatech. They weren't talking about its flashy beginnings or Lucas's big promises. They were talking about its downfall. "Did you hear? He's trying to sell it for peanuts," one of them said, stirring his coffee absent-mindedly. "For peanuts? What happened? Bankruptcy? Lawsuits? The guy's drowning in debt." Chloe froze mid-sip, her mind racing. Lucas was selling Novatech? The company her father had sacrificed everything for? The company that had been propped up with her college fund? She couldn't believe it, but she also couldn't ignore the opportunity staring her in the face. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming what was taken from her and turning it into something better. That night, Chloe stayed up until dawn scribbling ideas in her notebook. She didn't have $75,000 lying around to buy Novatech, but she knew someone who might be able to help. Mr. Patel, a regular customer at Golden Crust. Mr. Patel was a retired venture capitalist who often stopped by for Chloe's sourdough loaf and coffee. Over time, they'd struck up conversations about business and life, and Chloe had come to admire his wisdom and sharp instincts. The next morning, she approached him with her idea, a bold plan to buy Novatech through a private investment and transform it into something new, a community hub for small businesses and creatives called Phoenix Hub. Mr. Patel listened intently as Chloe laid out her vision, nodding thoughtfully as she spoke. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair and smiled. "You've got guts," he said simply. "Let's do it." The deal was set in motion within days. Mr. Patel agreed to provide the funding under one condition. Chloe had to handle every detail herself, from negotiating the purchase price to overseeing the transformation of the space. Chloe didn't hesitate. This was her chance to prove herself not just as an entrepreneur, but as someone who could turn adversity into opportunity. She contacted Lucas through his lawyer, requesting a meeting to discuss purchasing Novatech. At first, Lucas refused outright. He didn't want anything to do with Chloe after everything that had happened between them. But when Chloe presented him with documents detailing his unpaid debts, pending lawsuits, and the looming threat of personal bankruptcy, his bravado crumbled. "You don't have a choice," Chloe said calmly during their meeting at the lawyer's office. "You can either sell it now and walk away with something, or lose everything when the creditors come knocking." Lucas stared at her across the table, his face pale and drawn. For a moment, she almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "Fine," he muttered finally, signing the papers with trembling hands. With Novatech officially under her control, Chloe wasted no time getting to work on its transformation into Phoenix Hub. The name wasn't just symbolic. It was personal, a reminder that even after destruction, there's always room for rebirth. The old office space was a mess, stained carpets, broken furniture, and walls covered in peeling paint. But Chloe saw potential where others saw ruin. She hired local contractors to help renovate the space, choosing bright colors and open layouts that encouraged collaboration and creativity. She added co-working spaces equipped with state-of-the-art technology for small businesses trying to get off the ground. She built event rooms where local artists could host workshops or performances. And she created a cafe area stocked with pastries from Golden Crust, ensuring that her bakery remained part of this new chapter. As weeks turned into months, word about Phoenix Hub began spreading throughout Boston's entrepreneurial community. Small business owners flocked to the space for affordable office rentals. Creatives booked event rooms to showcase their work. Students came by for networking events hosted by industry leaders. The once empty halls of Novatech were now filled with life. Laughter echoing through meeting rooms, brainstorming sessions spilling over into shared workspaces, and the smell of fresh coffee wafting through the air. Chloe watched it all unfold with quiet pride from behind the cafe counter one afternoon as customers lined up for pastries and coffee before heading back to their desks. This wasn't just a business anymore. It was a beacon of hope for people like her who had been knocked down but refused to stay there. One day, as Chloe was tidying up after closing hours at Phoenix Hub, she heard footsteps behind her. Turning around, she saw Lucas standing awkwardly near the entrance. "I just wanted to see what you did with it," he said hesitantly. Chloe studied him for a moment before nodding toward one of the co-working spaces filled with people typing away at laptops or chatting over whiteboards covered in ideas. "This is what I did," she replied simply. Lucas looked around silently for several minutes before turning back to her. "You really turned it around," he admitted quietly. Chloe didn't respond right away. Instead, she walked over to him and handed him one of her signature cinnamon rolls wrapped neatly in parchment paper. "Take care of yourself," she said softly before walking away. That night, as Chloe locked up Phoenix Hub and stepped out into the cool Boston air, she felt something shift inside her, a sense of closure she hadn't realized she needed until now. She didn't need revenge anymore. Success had already spoken louder than any words ever could. And as she walked home under the glow of streetlights reflecting off puddles from an earlier rainstorm, Chloe knew one thing for certain. She hadn't just reclaimed what was taken from her. She'd built something even better out of its ashes. Part 4. The Resolution, Reconciliation. There's something magical about a new beginning. It's not just the fresh paint on the walls or the hum of excited voices filling a space that was once empty. It's the feeling that, for the first time, everything you've worked for is finally coming together. That's how it felt for Chloe on the morning of Phoenix Hub's grand opening. The air was crisp, carrying the faint smell of rain from the night before. Inside, the space buzzed with energy. Entrepreneurs setting up their booths, artists arranging their displays, and volunteers putting the finishing touches on event banners. The walls, once dull and lifeless, now gleamed with vibrant colors and inspirational quotes painted in bold letters. From ashes we rise. Chloe stood near the entrance, watching it all unfold. She should have felt nervous. This was the culmination of months of hard work, late nights, and countless sacrifices, but instead, she felt calm, grounded, like she was exactly where she was meant to be. By noon, Phoenix Hub was alive. Hundreds of people poured in, small business owners eager to network, families curious to explore the space, and community leaders who had heard about Chloe's ambitious project and wanted to see it for themselves. The cafe area was packed with customers lining up for pastries from Golden Crust. Chloe smiled as she watched one of her regulars bite into a cinnamon roll and close his eyes like he'd just tasted heaven. In one corner, a group of young entrepreneurs huddled around a whiteboard covered in scribbled ideas. In another, an artist was teaching kids how to paint landscapes using watercolors. The sound of laughter and conversation filled every corner of the building. This wasn't just a business, it was a community, a place where people could dream, create, and grow together. And Chloe had built it from nothing but grit and determination. As the day went on, familiar faces began to appear among the crowd. The first was her mother. Chloe spotted her near one of the co-working spaces, standing awkwardly by herself, as if unsure whether she belonged there. Her mother looked different, older somehow, but her eyes still held that same softness Chloe remembered from childhood. Chloe hesitated for a moment before walking over. "Mom," she said gently. Her mother turned toward her, and for a second, they just stood there in silence. Then her mother reached out and took Chloe's hands in hers. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, her voice trembling. "I should have stood up for you back then. I should have fought harder for you." Chloe felt a lump rise in her throat, but managed to smile through it. "It's okay," she said softly. "You're here now." Her mother nodded, tears glistening in her eyes as she looked around at everything Chloe had built. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. Later that afternoon, as Chloe stepped outside to catch her breath, she saw him. Her father. He was standing across the street, leaning against his car with his arms crossed over his chest. He didn't move when he saw her. He just stood there watching, his face unreadable. For a moment, Chloe considered walking over to him, but something stopped her. Maybe it was the years of hurt still lingering between them, or the knowledge that some wounds take time to heal. Instead, she gave him a small nod, a silent acknowledgement, and turned back toward Phoenix Hub. When she glanced over her shoulder a few minutes later, he was gone. The last person Chloe expected to see that day was Lucas. It was late in the afternoon when he appeared near the cafe counter, looking out of place among the cheerful crowd. His shoulders were slumped, his hands shoved deep into his pockets as if he wanted to disappear into himself. Chloe approached him cautiously. "Lucas," she said evenly. He looked up at her with tired eyes that no longer held the arrogance she remembered, but something closer to humility. "I just wanted to say congratulations," he said quietly. "You did good." For a moment, Chloe didn't know what to say. This wasn't the Lucas she'd grown up with, the one who always seemed so sure of himself even when he had no reason to be. This Lucas looked lost. "Thank you," she said finally. Lucas nodded and started to turn away, but hesitated. "I'm sorry," he said without meeting her gaze. "For everything." Chloe watched him walk away without another word. She didn't call after him or try to stop him because some things are better left unsaid. As evening fell and the last guests trickled out of Phoenix Hub, Chloe stood alone in the center of the space, taking it all in. The laughter that still echoed faintly in her ears, the warmth that lingered in every corner like sunlight after a storm. She thought about everything it had taken to get here, the betrayal that had broken her heart, the nights spent working until her hands were raw, and the moments when doubt threatened to swallow her whole. But most of all, she thought about what this place represented. Not revenge, but renewal. Not anger, but hope. Phoenix Hub wasn't just a building. It was proof that even when life knocks you down, Even when everything you've worked for is taken away, you can rise again stronger than ever before. That night, as Chloe locked up and stepped out into the cool Boston air, she felt something shift inside her, a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. She didn't need validation from anyone anymore, not from her father or Lucas or anyone else who had doubted her along the way. She had built this life herself, with nothing but grit, determination, and an unshakable belief that even broken dreams can lead you somewhere beautiful if you're brave enough to keep going. And as she walked home under a sky painted with stars, Chloe knew one thing for certain. This wasn't just an ending, it was a beginning.